Welcome. Today we're going to discuss Defying the Storm, its execution, some of the things that can go wrong during its execution, things you can do to compensate or fix those issues, and just general things you should know about the technique. So let's start out with the attack. The attack is an in-flight major with a man-made weapon as opposed to a natural weapon. In this case, a storm, as we call it in Kenpo. It's a right roundhouse club attack. So because we're dealing with a weapon, it's important to know that we have rules for that. One of our rules in Kenpo is to always keep a check on the weapon. Now we can do that either physically or conceptually. So keep that in mind while we're doing the technique. So like calming the storm, since it's of the same attack, the idea here is to stop him at the apex of that circle so he doesn't generate any power towards me. And then we do that in calming the storm by striking to the face. The problem with this is I didn't gauge it correctly, and I have to now stop this forward momentum. So we're going to be striking to the arm as opposed to striking to my opponent because he's already past the apex of the circle. So the idea here is I want to strike the arm, and then the first thing that can go wrong is I close my hands so I can hit really, really hard. But now I have to open them before I'm able to grab and control my opponent. So it takes longer, and you're losing margin for error, right? By keeping the hand open, I get more margin for error than if I have my hands closed. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that your hands are open and that we are striking this arm and able to control it immediately. Because remember, we have to keep a check on the weapon at all times. Now, keep in mind, at any point during the technique, if it was to drop the weapon, I now need to visually keep a check on that weapon to make sure that there's no one else in the environment trying to get it, or even my own opponent trying to fight me for it, because I might have to disengage and get to the weapon. If you notice, a lot of people like to strip the weapons in the techniques. That's not part of the ideal phases, but it's a better way to make sure that you have a check on the weapon. So it's up to you if you decide you want to do it or not. So, but from here, we'll continue. We get the hyperextension. You're not really going to get the break because of the 3 points of contact and the shoulder not being fixed. It's going to continue to move. So we're going for a lock, not a break. So the idea here is to pull him in so I can flap the elbow, taking advantage of this open-ended triangle to start controlling the height. So the next thing that can go wrong here is we walk away from our hands. I start to step back, and then using my muscles to try to bend my opponent down. This is not recommended because we're not using our body. We're only relying on the strength of our arms. The next thing that people try to do to fix this is to try to take the circle to try to get them to bend down. If you notice, again, that's almost a whole hour on the clock to try to get them to bend, which takes too long. So instead of using depth, we're going to use width. And then the idea is I'm going to get my elbow and I'm going to anchor it, creating body fusion so that whenever I step, it's going to stay with me. And then taking his hand, and again, remember, just like we did the horizontal version where I want to stop him at the apex, I want to do the same thing vertically by shifting the hand 15 minutes on the clock and putting it right over his shoulder. So the next thing that can go wrong here is where we're stepping. I started here, we step forward, I don't want to go back to where we came. The idea is to take advantage of his center line and go in the direction where he's got the minimal depth zone, which would be on a line rather than a circle. So if you were to do this in a circle, you're going to start orbits that are going to come back and reorbit into you. So the idea is to do a line to get him to bend down and control their height zone. Once we have him down, we're going to take advantage of this open-ended triangle by delivering a knee. Remember to keep a compact unit anytime we do knees and elbows. And then we do this both vertically with the foot or the knee, and then vertically downward with the elbow. So if you notice, you are left in the middle of a technique. This is where you can decide whether you want to strip, whether you want to do something else, or whether you just want to cover out and leave. That it's up to you guys to decide. It's not part of the ideal phase. We're just going to cover out. So one more time, as the attack is coming in, we're stepping forward, striking to the arm. Remember to keep your hands open, not closed. This gives you more margin for error, and you can immediately start grabbing the arm for control. Hyperextension or lock if you can get it, flopping the elbow to the under the chin, contouring and taking advantage of the open-ended triangle. Body fusion by anchoring my elbow. Remember, using the width, not the depth, and not walking away from my hands. Not a circle, a line using his minimal depth zone, getting the hand above his shoulder, because that keeps him, again, at the weakest point of the circle, so he can't fight it as much. Using vertical to do gravitational opposition and gravitational marriage, and then up to you what you want to do by keeping a check on the weapon at all times. So one more time without the explanation and a little bit quicker. Up. We hope this video helps you. Thank you very much.